Direct, and it's so nice to be here with you today. I have been watching my granddaughter, and Evie is 3 months old now, and she's keeping me busy. So I haven't been working on a whole lot of knitting this week, but I still wanted to share with you, and I wanted to talk about some questions that are common at our knitting table, or maybe questions that our begin-to knitters or crocheters are not wanting to ask because they may feel awkward about asking those questions. So I wanted to share a few of those questions and maybe some solutions or ideas that I have that'll help you get through them. And so here we go. First of all, I wanted to let you know that our prize for last week was this lovely classic alpaca tweed, and it is in this lovely red and the black colorway. And let's see if I can find the numbers on there. It doesn't have a name. It was 2015 or color number 404 for the dark gray color. But this is 100% baby alpaca tweed, and I love this classic alpaca yarn company. And so I hope that the winner from this last week enjoys it as well. And we'll be talking more about that in just a second.
Got a lot of people coming online, Debbie.
Awesome. Also, as we're going along, if you really enjoy what you're looking at and you want to share with others, go ahead and push that share button and let us know what you're working on, and you can be entered to win the contest for this week. And the contest for this week is Knitter's Pride Waves Crochet Hook along with some vintage worsted. And the reason why I chose these two projects is the beginning crocheter, one might choose rather an expensive yarn like vintage that's also of high quality and in a lighter colorway, and also applied yarn, meaning that it's not single ply. I'm looking for a single ply here, but I don't happen to have one in front of me. But if you look at these plies, you can see it's actually applied yarn, because when you unroll it, you can see that there are several plies. This is a 4-ply yarn, because you can see 4 little plies on there, and then it's twisted together. And these are easier for the beginner knitter or crocheter to work with than a yarn that just has one big ply. Okay, so keep that in mind as beginners when you're going along. So a couple of things that I wanted to talk about is knitting versus crochet, and what is the difference between knitting versus crochet for our beginners who are out there thinking, do I want to knit or do I want to crochet? And there's pros and cons to both. I truly believe that whatever you practice most is what you're going to be most comfortable doing. So those who have picked up crochet and practice on a daily basis are going to be more comfortable with crochet than those who are maybe working on knitting, but they don't practice that often, and they're still kind of in the beginning stages. They don't progress onward because they didn't practice long enough to get through those learning hurdles that we have to get through to feel comfortable with it. So anyways, a couple of the basic obvious differences of crochet and knitting. One of them, when you crochet projects, this is the Malia cowl that I did, and if this from here to here is one stitch. So if you look at it that way, and you say to yourself, or this right here, this is a different stitch. You see how wide it is? Even on the chunkiest yarn in knitting, this is bulky weight yarn, very, very bulky. You see this 1V? That's one stitch. It's much smaller than doing your crochet. So being able to complete, if you're proficient in crochet, you can complete a project really quick just because all of your stitches are huge compared to the knit stitches. And so that's why a lot of people will say when they're crocheting, I was able to get it done a lot faster, and it's just because the stitches themselves are bigger than the knit stitches that you would find. So those are things to keep in mind when you're trying to decide whether you're going to do one versus the other. Like I said, there is no substitute for practice. And I think when they say practice is perfect, I really believe in that, because I feel like whatever you practice, you're going to be improving as you go and learning. And so we all want to do that. A couple of things with crochet, it uses more yarn because the stitches themselves are bigger, and so your yarn will go a little further with knitting than it would with crochet. But both quite lovely. So it's whatever you like, whatever your passion is, I would try them both and see which one you like, and whatever you like, try that one first. But don't forget that you have to practice on a daily basis. As I'm talking, and if you have any questions, be sure to share with us, and we can learn from each other. That's great. I love hearing what your ideas are, and any questions that you might have, I'll be happy to answer those for you. Okay, so now...
Oh, 1 second here. Debbie asks, does crochet use more yarn than knitting?
Yes, it uses about 30% more yarn for crochet than knitting. And it is great for projects. I find that I love crochet. My favorite crochet projects are the lacy weight shawls, are absolutely beautiful, and crochet toys are so darling. And I love crocheted hats, and the Malia patterns, I love those. That's why I did those. And as I'm improving, I'm getting the opportunity to make more advanced patterns in crochet, and then I'm getting to those patterns that I've been dying to work on, but my skill level isn't there yet. So I'm working on that every day. I'm always trying to learn something new, and I hope that all of you out there are doing that as well, because it really is exciting, I feel, to learn just a new bit of information and be able to bring that into your life and use it for making things better.
There's a question on the shawl also, what the pattern is, that shawl you showed.
This one right here?
Yeah.
Oh, this one I did a long time ago, and it's out of a universal yarn, and it's called Amplify, and it's an acrylic yarn, and it is super bulky. And this pattern, let me tell you the pattern, it's found on Ravelry. It's a free pattern. It's called the Amplified Shawl by Jan Rose.
I think we have it on our site too.
Yes, and I think it's on our website as well. But this was made with, I believe, 2 skeins of yarn that I used, and I did it on one trip, on one of our motorhome trips on the way there. That's how quick it is to be able to knit this project on the super bulky yarn. It was really fun. If you want a gift, this is a super Christmas idea for, you know, people when you have to knit for a lot of people. It's nice to be able to make something that's nice but is fairly quick knit. Also, I wanted to mention to you, I don't know if there are people out there that are locals. Today is the last day to enter in the fair, and I want to encourage all of you that can enter into the fair, please do enter into the fair. And it's not about the prizes. What it's about is helping others see and enjoy crafts, and maybe getting them encouraged to try it themselves. And definitely about teaching our young kids to learn how to make things, create things. Instead of just being consumers, we're also producers of different crafts, and that, I think it's just wonderful. So the more that we can encourage others and kids to enjoy crafts, that's fantastic. So I'm going to be entering things in the fair as well, and I don't know exactly what I'm entering. Also, if you're going to enter in our fair, which is the North, let me tell you what I wrote it down here so that we could. It's northidahostatefair.com, and you go to the exhibit section, and then under that you would click entry forms and general rules, and if you print out the page, you can actually fill that out and still enter items for the fair until 8 p.m. tonight. So that's wonderful. You just have to go and bring your stuff over there today, and we're in the non-perishable section. So if there are those of you that are on the fence about whether or not to put your knitwear or crochetwear in the fair, it's wonderful if you do it. See, if we all get together and we decide that we don't want to put stuff in, then pretty soon we won't have a fair for the children to enjoy and for other adults to enjoy. So we want to all try, and if we can, you know, if you're able to go ahead and participate and put things in the fair. And I have these different things. I have a couple sets of mucklucks here that this is Andrea Mowry's. It's called The Wanderers, and it's a pattern on Ravelry. It's a paid for pattern, and it has the afterthought heel, which is pretty cool. Anyway, I was thinking about entering those, and then this one I did a shorter cuff, and I used a different yarn. This is Misty Tonos, which is a 50-50 alpaca blend of yarn. Anyways, those are a couple of things. And then this was the transition shawl, and I was thinking maybe I would enter that. That was a Michelle Hunter knit along that we did not too long ago. Also, I wanted to mention to you that coming up, is it in August, Jim, that Michelle Hunter is going to be doing another knit along?
October, I think.
It's in October, so keep looking for that because we'll be posting about that. She's going to be doing another knit along using Sueno, which is a blended yarn from Skacel, and we're getting that yarn in, and it's going to be quite lovely, and we're going to be participating along in that cowl that she's going to be doing. And so for those of you that don't know what a cowl is, it's called a knit along, and she always teaches us new skills. Michelle Hunter, if you haven't done any of her patterns or followed in any of her knit alongs, she was a teacher her whole life, and she was a teacher of teachers, and then she learned how to knit, and so she uses her teaching skills to teach you how to knit, and you always learn something new when you do her knit alongs. So I'm excited about that. Also, this was a chevron cowl that I did, and this was using Simply Kriya, and I'm thinking maybe I might put that in there. I thought it was pretty neat, and then I did a little hat to match it, and if you look really close, it's cute. So we'll see how what I'm going to put in there, and I'll put in a few other things as well. That isn't my whole selection. I just grabbed a few things that I may be putting in there, but I want to put in as many items as I want as I can so that I can encourage others to participate in crafts as well, because it's pretty cool when you can create things. So anyway, also, now that we've talked about crochet versus knitting, the next thing I wanted to talk about is what is the best yarn for beginners who are out there. And first thing I would say is don't buy expensive yarn. 100% baby chunky alpaca may not be your best yarn for the first project, just because you're learning how to hold the needles, you're learning how to maintain your tension, and you're learning all these new skills. So your first projects may not be exactly perfect, and you want to not be disappointed by that. You want to just expect that that's what's going to happen, and give yourself a break and realize that you have to practice a lot before you get really good at something. So be encouraged when you practice every day. If it doesn't look perfect, you tell yourself, hey, I'm learning, and it's okay for it not to be perfect. So you always give yourself a break, and you can use like one of these yarns. This is vintage worsted, and I would highly recommend this for beginning knitters and or crocheters. It is a wool blended yarn. It's machine washable, and it's in a light color, which light colors are always good, better than dark colors. So when you're first starting out, I have seen people go grab a big single ply yarn or whatever, which is really hard for beginning knitters and or crocheters to work with, and then they'll grab some yarns that look like this. Maybe see all these multicolors and dark multicolors. These are like darn near impossible to see your stitches. When you're first learning, you need to learn how to identify your stitches. That's how you can be successful. And so if you choose these hand painted yarns that are number one, expensive, number two, dark colored, and just not easy to work with, and then you tell yourself, I wasn't able to do it. And you know what? It's not your fault. It's the yarn's fault. You need to choose the proper yarn for your project. And also, I would say that maybe you want to try some Uptown Worsted. Uptown Worsted is acrylic yarn. It's reasonably priced. It is applied yarn. These are colors. I wouldn't go any darker than this blue color. Keep your yarns a little bit lighter for the first couple projects. And I have seen people pull out black yarn or really dark yarn, and they quit. They'll try and knit or crochet their first project with something like this, and then they will never advance. They leave it and they never get past that, because even me, I would have a hard time with some of those colored yarns and some of the dark colors when I can't read my stitches. So I wouldn't expect a beginner to be able to do it. So leave those other yarns until you're more advanced and get a few projects completed under your belt. And you want to look for easy patterns that are maybe just knits and purls, no increases and decreases at first. And then learn to recognize those stitches, and you'll be happy, and you'll have projects finished, and you'll be able to progress on more quickly. Okay, I know that we had this one beginning knitter, and her first project was knitting a pair of socks in the round. Are you kidding? Yes. And she was able to do it, but it was very difficult for her, and her life, she made her life so much more difficult by choosing that project for her very first project. So I would say, don't beat yourself over the head, and don't choose those really difficult projects. Advance along as you can go, and start with the easier projects, and you'll have more fun, enjoy it, and you'll progress along more quickly, because you'll be so excited to start that new project that you'll actually finish the old projects, which is wonderful. Okay, and now I wanted to talk about what kind of needles should a beginner use. And I would say that when you're first starting out, you are having troubles handling 2 needles at once, or 1 needle. If you're crocheting, you're just using 1 needle. And that's one reason that, another reason that people say that crocheting is easier than knitting, simply because you're using 1 hook instead of 2 needles. And so you only have to learn how to manage 1 instead of 2 with knitting. So that makes a difference when you're learning, right? But it still isn't that difficult, and with practice every day. And if you start with the wood needles, these are the Brittany needles, and they have a really nice finish on them. It's important to have needles that have good finish on them, because you want it to be smooth. You want your stitches to go from the left-hand needle over to the right-hand needle smoothly, so you can actually get your work done. But you don't want it so slippery that your stitches are falling off, because remember, in the very beginning, we don't know how to put our stitches back on the needle, which brings me to the next thing. So I'm sitting here, I'm working on this tabulated shawl. And what I would say is, when you're first starting out, Jim, can you take a close-up of this for people? I don't know if they can see it. It's just, your stitches are just a series of loops, right? So when you go to put it back on, should it drop off the needle, the easiest way, if you can, now I know when you're first starting out, you don't have a lot of tools yet. You
What's
just
the
only
question?
have a couple of tools. What's that?
What's the question?
This one is, I'm showing them on here. People will say, how do I get my stitches back on the needles when I'm working? If they drop off, how do you get your stitches back on? I would say, as an experienced knitter, I grab a smaller needle. So if I'm working with this size, I would go grab the smallest needle, doesn't matter. And then just put the stitches on any way that you can put the stitches on. So say that I am knitting along and some of my stitches fall off. So if they fall off, right, I would take a smaller needle and just put them on any way that I can. And do you see how I'm supporting the stitches with my index finger and my thumb? And I'm just holding both sides. So see, I can slide them on and off. That's fine, right? So once you get them on, though, you can go back and you can make sure that see how it looks like a horseshoe? You want this right-hand leg in the front. Whether it's a knit or a purl, that right-hand leg always goes in front. The only exception that I have found that might be different is for some of those left-hand knitters that are actually what I would call knitting backwards. Sometimes I have found they somehow twist their stitches so you would have the left-hand leg in front. But what I would say is, for those particular knitters, they know that, and they're already picking up the left-hand leg. If you don't know that, always take your work and look at it and say, is that right-hand leg in front or is the right-hand leg in back? Learn to just let the knitting itself show you what it is. So when you're looking at it, you can say that right-hand leg is in front. So if I do drop stitches in the future, I'll know how to get them back on.
There's a question. Okay. Can you show that one more time?
Sure, absolutely. Totally. So I have dropped some stitches. Okay, there's my stitches. I've dropped those. So I'm going to stabilize the stitches with my index finger and thumb and just put them on any way that I can. So they might be twisted, but the way that you can tell is your right hand leg would be in front. okay? And that's whether or not it's a knit or a purl. That's how you tell. I know that when I first started out knitting, I just taught myself. I had no one to tell me this. I had to learn it on my own over time. And I remember I had a very advanced knitter, and I said, how do you tell if the stitch is on the needle correctly? And she said, well, it lays flat. It lays flat. I didn't understand what that meant. I didn't know any more information. I didn't know how to get the stitch still back on the needle, but I did learn over time to actually look how the stitches are setting on my needle so that if I should run into a problem, I would learn how to put them back on. Also, I cannot stress enough, if you have a knitting or crochet group in your area, join it. Go there with them. Learn from each other. And there are so many wonderful knitters and crocheters out there and crafters in general that are excited to be able to share the craft with you. And they will help and teach you an abundance of knowledge that you might not have. So lean on those people that are better than you and let them teach you, and never be afraid to ask questions. I really feel like the only question that is kind of a stupid question is one that you never took the time to ask, and you never were able to learn because you never asked the question. And so I would say, anyone out there, if you have questions, don't be afraid to ask. It's great. It's great to learn things from each other. And yeah.
Suzanne said thanks, that helps, showing her that.
Oh, good. That's wonderful. Okay, so also for these begin to crocheters and begin to knitters and what have you, they're working along on their projects and they're like, my project doesn't look that great. You know, for instance, maybe on this cowl, a begin to knitter has cast on, but they cast on so tightly that it's sucked in at the bottom. What I would say for a crocheter and or a knitter, when you're first learning, and if you're not sure that your cast on is roomy enough to make it look so it's not pinched in, then what I would do is take a needle that's a couple sizes larger, a crochet hook or a needle, and then go ahead, if you're crocheting, do your cast on amount of stitches that you're going to cast on in that crochet hook that's a couple sizes bigger, and then take your crochet hook that you're going to be working with and use that to begin doing your work, and you'll find that, oh my gosh, it's wonderful. Also, I know how many people have told me when I was a beginner, they would say, well, just knit loosely, right? Just focus on knitting loosely, right? So I would relax and I would focus on knitting loosely. I'd be going along. Then something interesting on the TV would catch my eye, right? And then I'd be going along and I'd realize, uh-oh, I went back to doing it tight again. So I have work that is like loose, tight, or loose, yeah. Anyways, it was not good. So I would say, rather than forcing yourself to be someone who you're not, because those of us out there that do knit tight, we just knit tight. We're wound up, I guess, or something. Anyways, just take the needle a little size larger and go ahead and work with that, and then you'll find that your project looks beautiful. So I might cast on, if I was knitting this with a number 9, I might cast on with a 10 or maybe even 11, depending on the day, right? And then I would go ahead and knit my project in number 9, and it would be so wonderful that at the end you couldn't tell, you know, where I cast on, where I bound off. There's no sucking in anywhere, because guess what? I accounted for that up front. So if you plan a little bit ahead of time, you can make your projects look beautiful and not have to force yourself to be someone that you're not, right?
Debbie says you can also cast on holding 2 needles together.
Yes, and I have another friend of mine, Debbie. Her name is Debbie as well, and she does the same thing. She casts on using 2 needles together. But I have found that for beginning knitters, it's hard enough for them to cast on at all. So if you put 2 needles in one hand, they're like trying to fumble another thing. So I have found for those people, just to give them a larger needle up front and let them deal with one needle, and then just have them go ahead and knit right off of that onto the size that they're going to be using. And it works out probably easiest for them. For you and I, who could, we could hold 4 needles and cast on, and it's not going to bug us at all. But for those who are beginners, they might be very perplexed by that, going, how am I going to get the job done? I have a hard enough time starting, let alone, dealing with that. So anyways, food for thought. Also, when your work looks sloppy, it's a tension thing. When we first start out, we don't know how to create stitches that all look the same. And that's because we're kind of all thumbs. We're trying to figure out how to hold these needles or crochet hook and actually make the stitch and not feel like, a dumb bucket or something. Anyways, but you will get it. I promise that anyone who practices at anything, they get better and better. I guess maybe there are exceptions to the rule, but not very many. So I would say that tension issues mostly are resolved over time and with plenty of practice. Yes, all of you out there that are enjoying this Facebook Live today, make sure to push the like button and share with others out there, because maybe there are people out there that are not knitting or crocheting yet, and they're wondering, could I do it? Would this be something that I would like, And also, don't forget to post comments in the comment section. Let us know where you're from and what you're working on. And we would love to learn from you and enjoy your projects as well. Yes, don't forget to post photos. If you have photos or you're able to take photos, let's look at your projects. It is so encouraging. There's such beautiful projects out there, and we want to share and enjoy with you too. So, anyways, to recap what we're talking about today, we are talking about questions that are common questions that people don't really like talking about. People don't usually like saying, I'm a knitter and I dropped all my stitches off and I don't know how to get them back on, And so we know. We understand, we've been there, and I know that the begin to knitters, a lot of people they just, instead of trying to get the stitches back on, they just start over. So they start over, and then they start over, and they start over. And eventually, if they keep practicing, they will get good enough that they recognize their stitches, and they have learned from starting over and over. It's like extra practice with your yarn. It's like you don't have to buy more yarn. You just use that same yarn to practice again. It's not a bad thing. And there are many of us who would do that. And I can tell you from when I first started, I would not ask a question if it killed me. I'm like, wait, I'll figure it out. Give me a second. And I'd be researching it and trying to figure it out, looking at what I was doing, spending hours. And my husband will attest to the fact that I used to tell him, he'd say, are you done yet? And I'd like, oh, honey, if you keep talking, we might be here all day. Yeah. So, but I have gotten much better, and I've progressed far beyond that. And it was just I have very ordinary intelligence, and I'm able to do it. So I'm sure all of you out there who want to do this will be able to be successful. And it really is a joy and a craft that you can share for life. Both knitting and crochet and whatever. I love crafting. To me, it's just yarn is another tool and that I can use to create things. And that's wonderful for all of us out there. So I was just looking to see. Oh, I forgot to mention last week's winner is Patricia Lessard. And she won this wonderful classic alpaca tweed. Patricia Lessard won, and congratulations. You just need to give us your address and we can send your yarn out to you. And this is 100% baby alpaca yarn. Actually, it's not. It's baby alpaca yarn and 15% Donegal, which is little flecks in the yarn. And I made the cowl Malia mitts out of this, and I'm going to be doing another cowl out of this too. I love this yarn. It's delightful. And the winner for this week will be winning some vintage, and this is by Baracco. It is a wool blend that is machine washable and a waves crochet hook to go along with that. So you'll be able to enjoy that. And the way that you enter to win is post your comments in the comment section and share with us and share with others if you enjoy. And then don't forget to post your photos, because we always love looking at photos, and pattern names so that we can be encouraged. Maybe some of those patterns other people want to knit and or crochet, and so we want to know what they are. And also we love to know where you're all from, so that our knitting family, we can know where you're all from. In summary, we are talking about questions that people continuously ask or may not want to ask but should ask. And I had this cute little saying that I just saw in the store today, and I wanted to share it with you. And it's called, "Love is someone who offers to find your stitches when you drop them." And we're sharing the love, right? So I thought that was a wonderful saying. I thought that I would share that with you today. And if you get a chance, everyone out there, anyone who can, go ahead and sign, put your projects in the fair, and encourage others to knit and or crochet, or maybe quilting or cooking or whatever it is that you love to do. That's wonderful that we can create things instead of just consuming things. So you all take care, and I will be talking to you next week. And next week we'll be talking about blankets and throws that we love to knit and or crochet. So that is our topic for next week. So I will see you next week at 9:30 a.m. Talk to you soon.